Before we start this video, I'd just like to thank Trope Tweeter, one of my True Believer patrons on Patreon, for requesting this video. If you'd like to request a video, visit patreon.com/thebirdman to find out how.
They will stumble, they will fall, but in time, they will join you when the sun comes.
DC Comics. 56 seconds of logos.
You know, even though you're starting this video off with another ridiculous X seconds of logo sin, I love how energetic and full of life you sound while saying it, compared to how lifeless you are these days. This was the CinemaSins I enjoyed the most, when you weren't padding the runtime and laughing the way an incel grunts when he's finally getting some. Here, have a sin off.
Helpful 3D model tells us, yep, there's a baby in there. And it doesn't look like this baby's in any position to be born right now.
Are you suggesting that babies who aren't head down aren't ready to be born? Jeremy has never heard of C-sections or breech positions.
Hey look, it's John Carter of Krypton.
Hey look, it's a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of this movie cliche. Besides, Superman was based on John Carter. Look it up.
It's just beneath the central hub, sir.
Carla Gugino is heard and not seen.
Yeah guys, this is a video from 2013, a period in time before CinemaSins tried to appeal to the woke Twitter crowd and was making cringy references towards females like this. Good times.
I guess since it's a movie taking place on a fictional foreign planet, we're not allowed to question how the flying bug thing knew where Jor-El would come out of the structure, or how it knew that he'd be forced at the last second to make the decision to jump.
While it's fair to question how the war kite knew where Jor-El was, I don't see how this being on a foreign planet has anything to do with it, or why that was your logic for this sin.
Can he not call out for the rest of the troops he left on the platform to come help him overpower Jor-El and stop this launch?
Hey, Jer? You don't see him currently getting his ass kicked right now? I mean, imagine trying to call for backup while Mike Tyson is pummeling you.
Hey, 15 minutes in. Are we still on Krypton? Yes?
Here's 15 sins for sinning the fact that this movie gave us an extended look at Krypton, which is one of the best goddamn scenes in all of the DCEU.
How did these elaborate dick jokes by the visual effects department sneak past the director, the editor, the studio, and the MPAA?
I'm sorry, but if your dick looks like that and is that short and stubby...
Finally.
Jeremy was rooting for the destruction of Krypton. Basically, Jeremy's bizarro brainiac.
Diane Lane isn't my wife in this scene.
That's called a cinema win.
Just let him die.
Fortunately, Clark gets a lot better at letting people die by the end of the movie.
I'm pretty sure he saves the people on the oil rig and Lois Lane from being killed by the service robot. Hell, the only person he let die in the whole movie was his father, and that was because Jonathan's pimp hand is strong.
Lowering this heavy vessel into the barn basement must have required the help of a few friends, right? This can't be a total secret, can it?
You're aware that John and Martha Kinn are farmers, right? Yeah, that would suggest that there exists farming equipment somewhere on their farm. Your average modern tractor has enough torque to tow a 10-ton trailer, so a 17,000-pound spaceship is right in their wheelhouse.
I took it to a metallurgist at Kansas State. He said whatever it was made from didn't even exist on the periodic table.
And that metallurgist was wowed and amazed by the finding and told none of his colleagues.
How do you know that? The movie doesn't give you enough information about that event, so who's to say they weren't wowed and told none of their colleagues? This movie is about Superman, so telling you what a random metallurgist thinks isn't the story the movie is trying to tell.
And when that day comes, you're gonna have to make a choice of whether to stand proud in front of the human race or not.
The time that you do this, however, can't be when I'm about to die in a tornado. Just make sure it's not then.
The point of allowing Jonathan to die was that Jonathan didn't believe the world was ready for Clark. I mean, they literally tell you this in the movie.
I let my father die because I trusted him, because he was convinced that I had to wait, that the world was not ready.
Would simply escorting this dude out of the bar be proof that alien life exists on Earth?
It's possible. Think about it. Let's say Clark does escort this guy out of the bar by force. With how rowdy and disrespectful this asshole was, who's to say that he doesn't return with a gun attempting to kill Clark, and then the rounds just bounce off of him? And not only that, the biggest weakness to Superman is the people around him because they aren't super. So what happens if they get killed in the process?
Nope, this is a much easier explanation.
At the end of the day, who would automatically jump to, the guy I scared off by pouring beer on his head did this, and he's for sure an alien? I mean, a flat earther might, but that's because those people are clinically insane.
Asshole character tells audience he's an asshole by refusing to shake someone's hand cliché.
Or, these two characters have a history, as shown in Lois's dialogue, which explains that Hardy filed an injunction against her, probably due to him being in the military and her being a pesky journalist.
And did Clark decide to wait until the day some reporter woman shows up to go snooping? The way they had him unloading bags at the helicopter made it seem like this wasn't his first day. But if it is his first day, then we have a sin of convenience here, because it just so happens to be Lois Lane's first day on the site as well.
I still don't understand why coincidences in movies are counted as sins by CinemaSins. I mean, if they didn't mean it this time, Lois Lane wouldn't be important to the story, meaning she's only made important because she was here. I've stated this before, but the only reason you exist right now is because your parents coincidentally met when they did. If we were to make a movie about how Jeremy was born, then we'd have to show his parents as important individuals to the story, and at some point, they would be conveniently in the same place. Do you see how stupid that sounds?
Clark's superhearing was so strong as a child he had to lock himself in a closet, but he can't hear any sign that Lois is following him in this otherwise completely empty cave.
Telling that you watched the scene of Martha Kent teaching Clark how to focus his senses and block everything out, and are still asking why doesn't Clark just hear someone not making that much noise?
To see you standing there having grown into an adult.
Okay, if you want to have Jor-El show up through some magical space technology, that's okay, but why is he saying things like, to see you standing there having grown into an adult, as though he's actually there, seeing Clark? I mean, at least explain something. Toss me some technobabble or something.
They do. Jor-El's consciousness is uploaded into the computer of the ship. This is explicitly stated in the film.
Also, way to undercut the power of the dead father cliché by basically letting Jor-El live through this avatar, interact with Clark, guide him, and generally be a normal father for the rest of the movie.
Jeremy thinks Jor-El was generally a normal father for the rest of the movie. You don't get any dumber than that. Also, I'm enjoying the irony here that CinemaSins is annoyed that the movie is undercutting a cliché while spending the majority of the time sinning clichés.
Of all the worthless things this movie wastes time showing us, there can't be like a 3-second explanation as to how the Superman suit got into this ancient scout ship?
It's clearly shown that the suit itself is the usual clothing worn by Kryptonians in the scene you were bitching about earlier. As for why it has the House of L's insignia, this is actually Supergirl's ship. The real sin is that this movie made Superman's older cousin his 18,000-year-old ancestor.
Looking for Pete Ross. Do you know him?
Yeah, he works at the iHub.
Oh, yeah. Who doesn't know the quiet, introverted, commonly named Pete Ross in this town?
Son, this town is called Smallville. Do I need to say anything else?
I figured if I turned over enough stones, you'd eventually find me.
I wonder how many times Lois said that line before she was finally right that Superman was behind her.
Once.
Apparently no other strong winds accompany this huge tornado.
Asking for things that are clearly happening on the screen cliché.
Also, this seems to be a crazy sunny day for a tornado to form.
Jeremy thinks the sun completely disappears when there are tornadoes.
This movie has more flashbacks than Memento.
Considering the entirety of Memento is one giant flashback, all movies that have 2 flashbacks have more flashbacks than Memento.
How did you find your way to Earth?
We managed to retrofit the Phantom projector into a hyperdrive.
The details of how you make something from nothing are not important.
A phantom projector, or phantom drive, is a type of engine that Kryptonians use to access black holes. It accomplishes this goal by folding space-time. This is precisely the technique that is the Einstein-Rosen bridge, otherwise known as a wormhole. This is also shown in the film, something CinemaSins conveniently leaves out of their video.
Zod takes Lois prisoner for reasons unknown, but fortunately she has that key thingy that Superman gave her so she can kickstart the plot again.
Pay attention. Lois was brought onto Zod's ship because she wrote an article about being on the Fortress of Solitude. In Zod's mind, she probably had information leading to the Codex being in that ship.
The command key, Miss Lane.
How does Jor-El know who Lois is?
Once Lois put the command key into the ship, Jor-El became a part of the ship. This means he gained knowledge of everything that happened on the ship, including the mind scan of Lois that just happened.
Well, I guess it couldn't be a superhero movie without some Jesus imagery and music, could it?
Pretty sure the concept of a Superman is derivative of the story of Jesus Christ. In fact, I'm fairly certain they're the same person, considering Jesus can shoot lasers from his eyes and bench press the moon. I read that in Corinthians.
Sure, if you've got the powers, you might as well use them, even when completely unnecessary.
So you mean to tell me that if you could jump fly, you wouldn't use that shit all the time? Hell, just because I could, I'd float to pee and call it expert mode.
Wait, I thought years of soaking in Earth's sun gave Superman his powers. as explicitly stated in the movie. But Zod and his crew are able to jump and fly all around like they've been living on Earth as long as Clark has.
That was not explicitly stated in the movie. Kryptonians do not need years of exposure to the sun to unlock their potential. Hell, the movie shows Clark using his abilities as young as elementary school. What the movie does show is that a non-experienced fighter such as Clark isn't as good at using his abilities like these militaristic Kryptonians are because he's never been trained.
Zod learns to focus the cacophony of sounds and sights that come with superpowers in about 3 seconds, which is significantly less time than it took Clark.
Speaking of things explicitly stated in the movie, Zod states that he's spent years training to hone his senses.
I was bred to be a warrior, Cal. Trained my entire life to master my senses. Where did you train? On a farm?
Why metal pin impression thingies to create snaky, snappy claws? Why not, oh, I don't know, anything else?
Who gives a shit? No, seriously, who watched this scene and thought,
why is the CGI sequence using this specific material to make these claws?
Besides, if it were anything else, you'd moan about that too.
Why is Lois falling when everything else is getting sucked into the black hole? And then Superman has to fly with all his might to make sure she doesn't get sucked into the black hole. This doesn't make any sense.
The black hole here is the Phantom Zone, and it's only working against things that were exposed to phantom energy. Notice Superman's face here? That's why he's flying with all his might. He's the one being pulled in, not Lois.
Well, this isn't like the Matrix Revolutions at all.
And the Matrix Revolutions isn't like Dragon Ball Z at all.
Ah, there goes HBO again.
Here's an idea, CinemaSins. How about just making a joke and moving on? Why is it that you have to make a joke and then consider that lame joke a sin of the film? Is it because your jokes wouldn't have the same effect if you didn't tell people when to laugh by using a ding sound effect? Might want to get better jokes.
Superman really had no choice here if he wanted to save those humans. I mean, it's not like he could have just gouged out Zod's eyes, or merely paralyzed him by breaking his spine, or thrown him across the room and kept fighting the fight he was winning, or used his ice breath power he somehow didn't discover in this movie to freeze Zod's heat ray, or even Zod himself.
While we're at it, let's talk about how the plot could have been completely different because you didn't like how certain things happened. I mean, what the hell is this complaint? This is how the story went because it's how the writers wrote it. If you could do any better, you'd be making movies, not bitching about them on YouTube.